Kira sees big green swirling spots the size of Albanian melons. Damar teaches Zial a trick, and Dukat is no longer the chief military advisor of the Tapa consul. His mother disowned him, his wife took his children, and she left. Hello and welcome to the 7th Rule with Sirach Lofton.
Hello, hello.
We are joined by a very special guest, Dr. Una McCormack.
Hi there.
My name is Ryan T. Husk. I'm just glad we got through that beginning. It took me 2 other tries. There's some tongue twisters in there. I don't even know if I said it right. We are doing a review of Deep Space Nine's Return to Grace, directed by Jonathan West, written by Hans Beimler, and the story is by, I think, a new person, Tim Benko, or Tom Benko. Do we know who that is? Have we seen him before?
No, just 20 minutes before I came on here, I looked him up thinking, I'd never seen that name before. And it turns out he's the only person to have done something like written, directed, and edited an episode of Star Trek.
Edited,
so
you're right.
He's like a really interesting guy, which I didn't know. I didn't know, and I should do. I should know that kind of thing.
Yeah, he's edited 58 episodes of Voyager, 16 of Deep Space Nine, and 40 episodes of Next Generation. His name is Tom Benko. You're right. That is very good trivia. And he directed 2 episodes of Next Generation, and he wrote 2 episodes of Deep Space Nine, Return to Grace, and one we actually did a little while ago, The House of Quark.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
See, I shouldn't have said I looked that up 20 minutes ago. I should have been really smooth about it. I think, gentlemen, actually, you're fine.
If you look him up, you'll see that.
If you look him up like I did 20 minutes ago, yeah.
So Una here, for those that aren't familiar, is quite familiar with Cardassian lore and Deep Space Nine lore. She is a writer. She's written a good amount of books, several of them. I'd say, what was it, like 8 or 10?
Oh, yeah, crumbs. I've lost track now. But coming up for a dozen Star Trek novels, quite a few Doctor Who novels as well. So, yeah, the word they start using is veteran. And then you think, oh, right, okay, I need to oil my joints.
Right. So we'll talk a little bit more about that a little later. She's also written, I believe it was the 4th book of Discovery and the 1st novel of Picard. So very well versed, and she's a Cardassian expert. And this is an awesome Cardassian episode. It's kind of like a Kira episode, but So let's talk about it, shall we?
What's up, everybody? I'm Sirach Lofton from the 7th Rule podcast, and I'll be at STSF this year in the Bay Area, celebrating with our friends at Creation.
Okay. Sirach's also from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. You might recognize him from that. And my name is Ryan T. Husk of the 7th Rule. You've got to go to this convention. It's March 8th through 10th, just south of San Francisco in Burlingame, right by the airport. You're going to love it. There are already well over 20 Star Trek and sci-fi guests, tons of panels. This is March 8th through 10th. CreationEnt.com. That's CreationEnt.com to get tickets and to get your hotel. We can't wait to see you there.
Yeah, I'll be there. Ryan will be there. And we'll represent the 7th Rule podcast.
And Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So Sirach and I have a little thing that we've noticed that in Star Trek, whenever they're describing something, it's always something that ends in an IAN and then something that's familiar to us, like a Luvanian rat or an Albanian...
Incarian wool, that's one that comes off the top of my head. Yeah, it's ridiculous, isn't it? You think, how is that different? And it's the kind of trick you do as a writer to go, oh, I'm really, really stuck. I need to make it feel a bit alien, but I'm feeling quite tired today. So let me get my random syllable generator. Bing, 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 and then put fish or, or something at the end of it. Shh, that's a writer's trick, you now know. But you're absolutely right. Baldarian slugs or something like that.
Yeah, Baldarian dung beetle.
Exactly that. So, or the other thing to do is to take an ordinary word and just stick a colour in front of it, like silverfish or, that kind of thing. Gold petals. So,
do we ever see the planets when they mention these places? Like, are these places just completely like abstract, like Albanian? Have we ever seen the Albanians?
Well, do you know, I think it
Oh,
takes us until season 3 to see Cardassia Prime. So I'm
right.
not holding out much hope for the Albanians, to be
Right.
honest. And if we did, I suspect it would look very, very, very like quite a harsh piece of terrain, slightly outside Los Angeles. That would be my suspicion.
Right. With plenty of melons going around.
Exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah. They do always kind of shoot some kind of crazy planet, but you could definitely see like the Hollywood Hills in the background. And you're like, oh, I think that's Malibu.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's the Bolian Commissary.
Yeah, with the Bolian, that's another one. Yeah, Bolian ants or something like that.
Right. So
this episode, really quick, I was going to just say before you get into there, Ryan, was directed by Jonathan West. I don't want to forget. And Jonathan was our, I want to say he was our DP on the show for many years after Marvin Rush left in the second, third season, I think, to do Voyager.
I think you mentioned that, yeah.
This might have been, if I'm not mistaken, Jonathan's directorial debut on DS9, because he was always there behind the camera and setting up shots, but you'll see him. He appears in the documentary as well, talking about his experience. But I just wanted to give a shout out to his directing this episode.
Wow, he was the DP in 118 episodes. That's more than 2/3 of the episodes, and 47 episodes in The Next Generation. 47 is the magical number we all know, so that's pretty cool. And he's actually directed 6 episodes of Deep Space Nine, so we'll be hearing his name a little bit more. He directed Shakar, which we all remember, and this one, and then a few more coming up. Cool.
Yes. Yeah.
So we did, speaking of Shakar, Una, on this show, we like to mention the non-appearance mentions, which is somebody that their name is mentioned or they're talked about, but they're not actually in this episode. It's kind of like a credit that goes, lost. And everybody was talking about how Shakar is only in 3 episodes, but he feels like he's in more. So we surmise that he must get a lot of non-appearance mentions, and he did today, his first non-appearance.
Is he really only in 3 episodes?
See?
I'm amazed. Yeah. That's incredible. Yeah, that's wow, I'm a bit surprised about that. I would, if you'd asked me to guess, I would have said 10. I would have. But now you say it, I think, well, actually, no, we don't see him that much. It's one of the things the show's so clever at, that and why I think people really like the show. Is this sense that you're not just seeing maybe half a dozen people once a week. There's something living and breathing going on behind it. That promenade feels inhabited. You're kind of going, well, I know that the florist is there. We just haven't met them yet. Yeah. And that's exactly, it's just really, really clever. And I think it touches on one of the things I was just saying before, that we don't see Cardassia Prime. I don't think they technically visit the planet until something like season 3, but we have a real sense of what it's like and how it feels, and they do that in this episode. I think those opening, Kira's seeing these Albanian melon-sized spots because there's a breakdown in public health. So just these throwaway lines, you've suddenly got this whole planet sketched. It's really, really nifty world building. And they do it with characters. So I'm amazed he's only in 3. That's great. That's a really good fact.
Yeah. And just to piggyback up what you said, what they also do with the character building is kind of revisit storylines that they established early on. For example, we had in this episode kind of a bringing back of the story of Dukat and his daughter, and how that interaction played out with Kira in the beginning when she first learned about it, and you see how that it's affected him to this day. You also see kind of a carry on of the flirtation between Dukat and Kira. So I love the way they extend these stories and kind of blend them in throughout the season. So you're never really losing touch with what's up to date with each character.
Yeah, and they do you the credit, the viewer, to say, okay, we'll go. Maybe you didn't catch that one. but we'll bring you up to speed pretty quickly. All we need is a line of dialogue to give you that context. And then you can do the work and imagine the rest of that. Or if you've seen that episode, you'll go, oh, wow, yeah, I remembered that. And it's a reward to you that you were there and you saw this play out. And again, it's one of the great attractions of the show, because I think, as we all know, science fiction wasn't really serialized. So
right.
that's what makes it so special, I think. But yeah, just this sense of a deep world that's going on behind a really rich story world just always makes DS9 so enjoyable, I think.
Mm-hmm. And they keep the story going even when the characters aren't there. They just give us one sentence about, Shakar is doing this, or, we know that it's not just a one-off thing, that, the more they mention that person, that character is getting developed, whether we see them or not. I do wonder if they ever mentioned that to the actors. I feel like maybe they didn't, but I feel like it would have been a service to the actors when they do come back to say, by the way, you've been mentioned 3 other times since then, and here's what what they've said about you. That could help the actor kind of play that character a little bit better, I would think.
Yeah.
I can just say from my own experience, guest starring on TV shows, sometimes you're in a position where you don't know anything about what's going on as an actor. So you're walking into it. I don't even know who's the star of the show, or like I sometimes you don't even know. You've never watched a show. You don't know who the stars. You don't know who the regulars are. You don't know where they are in the arc of any kind of storyline.
Right.
So you're literally just walking in, saying your lines, doing your thing, and leaving. So I think Duncan kind of referred to that.
Right. Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Yeah. So it's there is a little bit of kind of feeling your way around when you get onto the set and try to fill out, what's the hierarchy and how everything kind of functions. But I have been in a position where I had no idea what the show's about. Or I had a very general idea of what the show's about. Like, this is a show about aliens. That's about all I know.
That's the best you get. Yeah. For those of you that also maybe this is your first time watching this show, we'll catch up to speed. Last week we had Duncan Regehr on, who played Shakar, and he said that he was on set and everybody was saying, "Oh, the emissary's come," and the emissary, and he kept like looking around, going like, and finally he says, who's the emissary? And I forgot. I think he said it was Renee, maybe, that whispered. He's like, "Oh, that's Avery." Oh, okay, but that's what it is. Nobody tells you what's going on.
Yeah,
you just expect you
and
to
of course
figure it
they're
out.
going to assume that the first minister of Bajor knows that, and it's Bajor, which that Bajor. Okay.
Yeah. I had a question for you, Una. As I was watching this, one of the things that came across my mind was the orders that Dukat got from headquarters when he called back. He thought he was going to get a positive response and be elevated to this hero-like status, but instead he was ordered kind of to stand down and not. And my question basically is that consistent with what you think Cardassians would do in such a situation?
I think in this case it is, because I think what they're doing, this thing that we're talking about sketching a world very, very lightly. They do a lot of this work up front where they tell you, we know there's this ongoing war, but right up front they dramatize it through this kind of jokey scene almost with Kira. We know that there's this kind of collapse going on back at Cardassia. We know there's been a change of regime. You've got a civilian instead of a military government. And that really they're kind of in decline. They've got, outbreaks of plague and infrastructure's crumbling. It all sounds very familiar. So I do think it's plausible. I wrote a novel actually, which kind of tracks all this. It's kind of set on Cardassia. It tracks all this period from quite early in the show to after the show ends. And you kind of have to piece it together from all these little throwaway lines, like you're kind of catching a line here or a line there. And it's actually pretty consistent. You watch this sort of decline of an imperial power as they pull out of Bajor, and then the military kind of implode and a civilian government takes over, but they can't quite hold it together. And then we're okay going into spoilers, aren't we? We're not working under assumption.
Oh, absolutely. And this is the lotus flower, right, that you're talking about?
No, this is another novel called The Never-Ending Sacrifice. It kind of tracks Cardassia's history.
Okay.
There's an episode earlier on, much earlier episode, about a little boy called Rugal, who's brought up on Bajor, but he's a Cardassian boy. And they send him back to Cardassia at the end, and it's his story, and we follow him through the Dominion War and all these sorts of things, and you see kind of the collapse of Cardassia. So I had loads of fun. I just was taking these throwaway lines and kind of piecing them together. But it is pretty consistent. You just see this sort of decline. And then as it kind of, you've got all these outbreaks of plague and they're not holding it together. What's the kind of thing you get next? You get a strong man who says, let's make Cardassia great again. And that's Gul Dukat bringing in the Dominion army. So it's all real credit to the writers here, because it's all very subtly woven in. But you have a real sense that they know what Cardassia's story is going to be. And it's going to be this collapse into a military dictatorship and an occupation at the end, of course, which is kind of the natural. You kind of start with the end of the occupation of Bajor and you finish with the occupation of Cardassia. It's all beautifully done. But you have to kind of, it's almost like you need to be commissioned to write a novel about it, to sit and piece all this stuff together. But don't worry, I've done it for you.
Did you?
It does work. Yeah.
It sounds the right person now.
It sounds like you really did your homework. Did you get all of that information from other novels or just from what's on screen?
That one I mostly did from what's on screen. I mean, I watch DS9 for pleasure and rewatch it for pleasure, and then somebody comes along and says, "Could you do this for money?" And you kind of go, "Yeah, that would be amazing. That would be fantastic." So you kind of get to sit and have to take notes, and it's real kind of geeky fun. You kind of sit there with your spreadsheet and the dates and where characters are and all this sort of thing. It's classic world building that any writer would do. But all these little mentions you sort of try and weave together into a consistent story, and you build up a picture of what this world must have been like just as it's all falling apart. They can't get the vaccines out in time, or they the water isn't clean, or the tram system isn't working anymore. But at the same time, you've got all the kind of elite having expensive dinners and this kind of thing. It all rings a lot of bells.
Deep Space Nine always does.
It really does. It's declining imperial powers are the same whether they're in space or not, I think. Yeah.
Well, since we're on the topic of your novels, of which there are several we mentioned, let's talk about very quickly. You wrote the first novel of Star Trek Picard as well. Yeah. And I feel like that's just got to be such an amazing situation. But I can't tell if it's like super restricted, because it's like their very first novel. And so they're like, okay, it has to be this, it has to be this. Don't say this, don't say this, don't say this. Or if they just say, you've written a bunch of books, you're good at this. Go nuts.
No, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that at all. No, because obviously this was a really significant show. It was a huge deal. Patrick Stewart coming back. It was a real. There was I'm sure you remember. There's such a big buzz around it. So it felt like a really, you're kind of being entrusted with something that people were lavishing a lot of love and attention and investment into. And it was an absolute blast. It was just so much fun from start to finish. I was getting scripts as they were coming through, so I was kind of getting the scripts and revisions of scripts. Right. Everything under a very tight NDA, non-disclosure, and that kind of thing. To the extent that when the first episode goes out, you're sitting there going, "I'm not sure people should be watching this." That's how kind of strict it all feels. So people watching this, that can't be right. So you're getting all these scripts and just immersing yourself in this storytelling. I was lucky that the novel is a prequel novel, so it tells the story of why Picard resigns from Starfleet. So I was that meant that I wasn't going to be affected by stuff that happened towards the end of the show, but I had to be kind of consistent with glimpses that we saw of. We do see him going into his resignation meeting, and we're picking up characters like Raffi who are in the show. We see some of her earlier story, but again, you're doing a similar thing to what I was doing with Never-Ending Sacrifice. you're sort of piecing together what you know from over here and turning that into a kind of consistent but fully fledged story over here. So it's great fun. It's a kind of storytelling as jigsaw puzzle as well, and trying to get tone and character right. So it's just a blast. It's a great way to spend the day.
Seems like it.
Yeah, good fun.
My question, actually, really quickly to follow up on that was, when you're giving those parameters, how much of it is your own creative, and how much is it like you have to tell this story?
Oh, well, what I did in this case was I worked very closely with Kirsten Beyer, who's the co-creator of Picard and has written for Discovery and so forth. And Kirsten had been a Star Trek novelist. She's written a lot of Voyager novels. That's what she was doing before she moved into TV writing. So she really knows what that process is like, and she and I get on extremely well. We're sort of very simpatico in kind of stories we want to tell, and the kind of character work we like doing. So we had a couple of sort of transatlantic calls where we sort of sat and thrashed through what we wanted to do.
Okay.
And then I just had the freedom to go off it, everything down to that was kind of broad strokes of the story, which is very common for TV writing. You're going to be writing collaboratively, and then somebody goes off and writes a first draft of the script. That meant I went off and wrote the novel, which is about 100,000 words. But within that, I had pretty much freedom to what the scenes were going to look like, the kind of rise and fall. So there are constraints, but they always feel collaborative. They never feel like they're closure. They always feel like they're generating. You're working with someone to generate better story. And that's what TV time writing's like. You don't feel it like constraint. You feel it like collaboration. So that's why I enjoy it.
Wow. I do have a question. My little nerd heart in me has a major question that I'd like to ask you about the Deep Space Nine books you've written, but I'm wondering if we have enough time to talk about it. We may have to hold it until after the other side of the break.
Sure.
What do you think, Sirach? I know.
That's a great teaser. I think you built it up now, so we might as well.
Ask and cut, yeah.
One thing to mention, though, absolutely everybody at home, make sure to go to our Patreon page. That's patreon.com/the7th-rule. Then you can join us and be part of our free-for-alls at the end of every episode. You can get all the footage before everybody else does, all kinds of stuff. Sirach will come over and cook you scrambled eggs. We've got like the coolest things. Patreon.com/the7th-rule. What are you going to say now, Sirach?
I mean, I do have a world famous egg chef game. So
really,
it is known.
Damn, I could go for some eggs right now.
Yeah, bring those eggs to Cambridge. I'd eat those eggs. I love eggs.
I might have to do that.
What kind of eggs are we talking about?
I do them any which way. But my recipe and my own signature is the scrambled cheese eggs.
Yeah.
Wow. See, I thought you were going to say something like, they're Aldavian eggs.
Yeah, Sirach's famous Aldavian mud eggs.
yes, the Bulgarian green eggs and ham. No, right. I have a really good chef game when it comes to breakfast only.
Oh,
yeah. All right.
It's breakfast that counts. Breakfast and steak. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. So we will take a break. I'm hungry, and we'll be right back on the 7th Rule. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the 7th Rule with Sirach Lofton.
Hello.
We also have Dr. Una McCormack here.
Hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk. We are doing a review of Return to Grace, Season 4 of Deep Space Nine. Really cool episode. Kira and Dukat Dukat's having fun. Kira is never having fun with Dukat. She won't allow it. Here are the trivioids that may or may not have made the cutting room floor. At the beginning of the show, Kira starts seeing big green swirling spots the size of Albanian melons. The Klingon invasion has all but destroyed the Cardassian health system. going to some obscure Cardassian outpost to share some Bajoran intelligence about the Klingons isn't exactly something Kira is good at. Yeah, I know why I didn't pick that one at the beginning. That's what she said. It's not something I'm good at. Dukat is no longer the chief military advisor of the Tatapa Consul. His mother disowned him and his wife took his children and left. Dukat is very glad that Kira convinced him not to kill his own daughter. It's tradition for Cardassian captains to take a percentage of the haul. Cardassian phase disruptor rifles have 4.7 megajoule power capacity, 3 millisecond recharge, and 2 beam settings. I'm not going to do the Federation one because that one was even crazier. Dukat says, lately when my mind wanders, I find myself thinking of Gul Marat. And Damar teaches Zial a trick, and Kira wants to adopt Zial. All right. Lots of good stuff in this episode. Lots of cool Cardassian stuff. Was there something, Una, that... oh, you know what? We owe her a question, don't we?
Oh, no.
All right.
Yeah,
we owe her a question.
Instantly going to get this wrong.
No, we owe you a question about your book writing before, and then we'll get back into this episode. I did want to ask, out of the several Deep Space Nine books that you've written, do you have a favorite and why?
Oh, wow. That's a really tricky one. I think, so I'm going to say there are two. So the one I've mentioned already, Never Ending Sacrifice, which is just covers this great span and deals with Cardassian history all through this period. And I'm really proud of that book. It's a pretty good book, I think. And then I did a book called The Crimson Shadow, which is set after the show, the end of the show. And it focuses on Garak and Picard. The Enterprise goes to Cardassia, and it's I know exactly that. And it's part of a big series, and there were 5 of us did 5 books together, and they were kind of dealing out the books, and they turned to me and they said, "Looks like you're going to have to take the Enterprise to Cardassia with Garak," and I'm like, "Oh, what a shame." And I love that book. It sort of roars along. I love writing the character of Garak. I think any writer loves a character like that. And that was my first New York Times bestseller. So that was kind of my was a very important book for me, as well as just being an absolute riot. So those are my 2 favorites, I think. The ones I'm really proud of. Very Cardassian centered.
So would you say Garak is your favorite Cardassian to write for?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not, the dialogue kind of writes itself. It just it's just a riot. The internal narrative is really, really good. It's playful. It's fun. And I find when I write the character of Garak, he uses vocabulary that I didn't know I knew. So it's slightly disconcerting as well. It's like, I didn't know I knew that word. No, you've been possessed by an alien interrogator. So it's a great character. You can see why the writers developed that character and ran with it. And then so brilliantly performed, obviously. So yeah, those are my favorites. Yeah.
Right. When you say that the character kind of writes himself, it does make sense. The way he was just so well written and so well performed that at that point you could put the character in any situation and what he's going to say and how he's going to say it and how much he's going to give away some of it and some of it he's not, and he's going to use all this eloquence and charm.
And you don't quite know how far he's going to push it. And I'll note as well that it's very typical of Garak that even though we're reviewing an episode in which he doesn't appear, he's taken over our discussion.
He infiltrates.
He does infiltrate.
Exactly that. An episode in which Dukat says, "I am the last Cardassian," and we're talking about Garak. Absolutely on point there.
Poor Dukat. Gul Casanova over here.
Oh dear,
yeah. About them, do you feel like this was Kira's softest moment with him? I mean, she's definitely changed her tone with him. She still keeps him at arm's length, but when he said, "Will you come to dinner?" she said yes relatively easily, it seemed.
Yeah, I think if this is Kira's softest moment, then you've got a fairly good piece of concrete that Ducat is hitting up against. It's a really uneasy relationship to watch. I think a really, really uncomfortable relationship. And even though he makes that offer, come with me at the end, there's not a second that she is tempted. There's no reality in which Kira would run off to the hills with Gul Dukat. It's just never going to happen.
Right. It was almost surprising he's even asking. Like, what are you thinking?
Well, that's very Ducat, isn't it? It sort of seems plausible. Why would anybody not want to run off into the hills with me? So it's very, very within character, I think, for Ducat. But she's not at any second tempted. And I think it's chiefly for diplomatic reasons, that professionally perhaps she feels she has to humour this man to some extent. And then later it's for the sake of his daughter that she continues having any relationship with him. It's for Zial's sake. I think that there's any interaction. I think as well that relationship, when we're watching it here, we don't know about Ducat's later association with Kira's mother. But when you rewatch an episode like this, you're kind of watching it going, oh man, you're a real creep,
Yeah.
Really, he's unequivocally the villain of Deep Space Nine for me. I find him a really irredeemable character.
I'm sorry. Did you say the hero? I didn't.
Oh, sorry. I did say villain, didn't I?
Pretty sure you said hero.
Was it Garrick kind of snuck in there? It's just talking through me again. But it's a really uneasy thing to watch. I make a joke about Deep Space Nine that what I really like about it is that my favourite things are that it's a show that is about hand-to-hand combat and dating. Yeah. And I think this episode's a really, really good example of this, because even through that dinner they're having, you're thinking, is she going to break his nose? It's sort of like that line between we are having a date and we're having a fight is really, 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 really close. And I think it plays out through this episode. So I find that a really uneasy relationship to watch. Actually, but Kira's got the upper hand. I wouldn't chance my luck with Kira.
She always does when in that situation with him.
Yeah. There was a moment where I thought that the truth made her laugh, and that was when he was kind of pressing her about Shakar and why she was with Shakar, and she said, "What business is of what is it your business?" And his response was kind of like, well, I kind of want to get close to you because it might benefit my own rise back to where I need to go. And I think that was a revealing statement, which she laughed and it actually enjoyed his honesty in that moment, I thought. Right? Because the way she reacted to it, she was like, oh, that's what it is. Like, okay, that's why you've been...
That makes sense. Yeah.
That makes sense to me, right?
Yeah. But at least you're not lying about it.
Right. At least that I can believe. And then the other issue was when he asked her out to dinner, he did it in the presence. First of all, he did it after apologizing for being rude to her while they were doing that simulation thing. But then he did it in the presence of his daughter, and I think that she kind of played a look over to her, like, I'm not going to reject your dad in front of you in this kind of way. I thought that played a big role in why she accepted.
Right, and I expected Zial to be there at the dinner as well, like almost like she would say, "Okay, I'll do it if Zial is there." Right, because if she's not there, then why the heck would I? That kind of thing.
That's a really good point, actually, that she feels she can't refuse in front of Zial and expecting Zial to be there. And oh no, she's not. Of course, this was always going to be a romantic dinner in your head, that we have this relationship. Does she say that line to him somewhere in the show? This is a fiction that you have in your mind.
It's red on her face for 42 straight minutes.
It really, really is, isn't it? Yeah. She has a great line in a later episode where, he's saying to her, oh, there was a time you would have taken a Cardassian threat seriously. She goes, yeah. not anymore, mates. You know.
No,
You
there
lost.
was a moment where he kept poking in on Shakar. I mean, he mentioned the file that he kept on him with all the women that he slept with, right?
That
And
dude was so jelly, man.
He was, God, he really tried to out that guy. I mean, so much haterade. But no,
totally.
Yeah.
but he said he did a probing kind of poking line at her where he said, "I kind of take you for being with more complicated men, right?" And then her response was, "Maybe I prefer simple, simple men or something like that."
She's like, "Whatever kind of man you're not, that's what I'm into."
Yeah, exactly that.
Whatever you say. Yeah. So I love that interaction, and that was pretty much the gist of the whole thing, you know. And she also pointed out one thing. I mean, he did say another honest thing about her inclination. He said, "You like powerful men."
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because he did mention the two people that she was with, both being like ministers and high level Bajoran government officials. So he did point that out, and I think there is some level of truth to that.
Yeah, possibly. Of course, she's known Shakar from when they were kind of grubbing around in caves together. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. And Kira is a powerful woman. You know, she's a very prominent member of the militia. She's the right hand to the emissary. So works as much for her, I think. And yeah, I think, like you say, so long as it's not Ducat, yeah.
So long as it's not, he's like anybody but you, basically.
Yeah, except possibly Garrick. Yeah.
Yeah, he just said, and there was a line he said, I can't find it in my notes, but he basically just said, "Oh, this is just motivation for me to get my powerful position back."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. In your dreams, all in his head. Yeah.
And one thing I just want to say I thought was clever about the writing on this, and that I thought was really the undercurrent to the episode. I felt as though she was teaching him, right? She was teaching him how to be the kind of fighter that she is,
right?
Which is, a rebel, right? Fighting against, rebelling against the occupier, right? Going up against something, a completely different style or methodology that he's used to, and I thought that was kind of an undercurrent of the whole thing. Like, this is how I fought.
And what's brilliant about that is that, of course, this is what she does eventually with the other Cardassian in the show, Damar. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's good that you mentioned Damar.
Because we really should mention Damar, because there he is delivering lines like reports from tactical, sir. Yeah, it's his first episode, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, Sirach wanted to talk about him, Damar, but I say right now, let's do it today.
Let's do it today. Not tomorrow.
Yeah.
But that's what she does for him at the end. She goes and teaches Damar how to run a resistance, doesn't she, on Cardassia Prime? So it's not Ducat she does that for in the end. It's Damar.
Right. And so this was his first episode. We are introduced to him. I didn't remember them actually mentioning his name, but they do in this episode. He does have a name. I wasn't sure if it was just like Cardassian, lieutenant or whatever.
Are we talking about Casey Biggs here?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was him. That was his first episode. And his makeup looked a little different than we remember it, but they probably just, because he was maybe just going to be a one-off guy, but then when they needed a Cardassian again, they bring him back, and that's how it works. And he really grew into the role, and it's one of my favorite characters, but all Cardassians are. What do you guys think of his introduction?
Oh, he's got. I mean, it's hard to watch this episode now without knowing and I'm bearing in mind what happens. That he ends up killing Zial as well as the other. So you've got this very tight, almost bottle show with these four characters, and there's going to be all this future history. So I think it's one of those episodes that perhaps you watch at the time, you don't realize the significance it's going to have when you come back to it and go, it's the first time we meet this guy. And I'm watching it now, I'm trying to watch it with those fresh eyes. You kind of go, oh, I can see why they go back to him, because even though he's just giving technobabble, there's a kind of curl of the lip or a sparkle in the eye, and you can see why they went, oh, that was great, let's bring him back. There was something happening there. but I'm sure nobody could have imagined what that character arc was going to be like. It's just an incredible way to go in 3 seasons. But I really like the performance just with that, really quite background role. And of course, the trick he teaches Zial is rubbish. Kira can see right through it. It's that Cardassian trick.
Trick.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen that one before. So I really like him, and the role just gets better and better and better. The part gets better and better.
Now, Sirach, since this was your first time watching this, Sirach's watching all of this through the first time. This is his first time, so it's really cool.
Yeah.
And I always kind of think of you in certain points of episodes. The one where I thought of you this time was, did it feel to you that the episode was about to end and then there were still 10 or 15 minutes left? Like when they're working so hard to defeat the Klingons, they come up with this whole thing, and then the plan works. They defeat the Klingons, happy ending. Ducat's going to tell his buddies over at the consulate or whatever, and done. You figure there's going to be like a minute left of like the post-mortem stuff, and then you look and there's still 13 minutes. Did it feel like that was the end of the episode to you?
Yeah, because I was thinking, what could they possibly get into again that could be solved within this short amount of time? So yeah, it felt like the end of the episode came early when they destroyed, the freighter ship and were managed to do the whole switcheroo thing.
Yeah.
But then, then I also thought, where is it going to go with, like, I didn't know. I just thought this is the end.
Yeah.
So I didn't really expect anything after that. I did think that I liked the line that Ducat said when eventually it got to the point where Kira's adopting Zial, and he said something about it giving him a reason to live.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me think of like what kind of state of mind he's been in if he's been looking for a reason to live.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Into a dark place, because he's lost everything, hasn't he? I think what's really interesting about this decision to let Zial live is possibly the single selfless thing that Ducat does in his entire life, and he just gets punished for it. Yeah,
and he had to be convinced to do it too.
He had to be convinced to do it. He's convinced to do it, and he loses everything. He loses his job. His wife walks out. His mother disowns him. Oh, I'd forgotten that nuance. Oh, his mother. Oh, Mama Ducat won't speak. She won't take my calls. He gets thrown out. He's humiliated. He loses his job, and that's for the single altruistic thing that he's managed to do. That must have been a dark place, I think. That the character is taken to. It's really interesting what you're saying about it feels like the episode was over. Because another really noticeable thing is there isn't a kind of B plot. So, you watch Deep Space Nine, there's usually kind of like a B plot where Jake and Nog are doing a prank, or, there's a festival going on, or the Waxanas arrive. There's usually like a sort of humorous...
One correction on this show: when Jake and Nog are in a plot, it's never the B plot; it's the A.
That is true. Actually, I should.
We talked for 45 minutes about those 3 lines.
Forgive me. I was absolutely wrong. Quite right. I retract that statement completely.
No, but you're right. There really wasn't a B plot. Yeah.
And I guess that's because the B plot is the Zial story. We're being asked to kind of refocus our attention on that. Yeah. So you've actually got a much more tightly knitted teleplay than you usually have. We're not nipping back to a darts match or something happening at Quarks, right. Or it's all this really tight narrative happening between these 4 people. It's really interesting, but so much of the payoff comes later, I think.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but did anybody else kind of have a reasonable explanation for them why the bird of prey didn't fire on them in the beginning, like when they fired?
Because it's not honorable. I bought it. Yeah, they're basically a Klingon would be like, why would I? There is no honor in destroying a basically defenseless freighter. it's almost like more insulting to let them live knowing that they weren't worth your time, and that's how Klingons think. So I thought that did work for me.
Okay.
Because and plus they had to do that because
exactly squash.
Yeah, otherwise the story goes a different way.
Yeah. You've lost one of your leads. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, that's how I read it as well. It was there's no honor in swatting flies. Yeah.
Especially with Klingons, and really when they write Klingons, the Klingon honor thing kind of goes in whatever direction the plot needs it to, because sometimes they'll say like, there is no honor in killing a defenseless whatever, but then other times when they say to Worf, well, why would the Klingons fire on a defenseless ship? And he says, in battle, there is nothing more honorable than victory, or something like. So they can use honor in any direction they want, whatever the plot needs.
It's like Garrick's duplicity, isn't it? It's if we need him to be loyal to the Federation this week, then we'll have it, I think. Yeah.
Right. Or the other way around next week.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just thought that, just to put a button on that, the writing situation, I did find it interesting, and leave it to Deep Space Nine to kind of break the television episode mold of structure. They basically had the end of an episode and then spent the final 10 or 12 minutes just doing kind of future exposition.
Exactly.
And that's a really interesting way of creating this serialized show to where we're like, ooh, there's more to this story. We're getting like a bonus, and you're probably right, Una. The way you put it is the B plot was just pretty much put at the end of the episode.
Yeah, and it's all about flagging to you that Zial is going to be important from here on. That this is a character that you're going to see again. This is a character you're going to want to invest in. This is a character that we're going to spend time with. And quite right, I think Zial ends up being one of the most interesting characters in the show to me. Really well set up. Just such an interesting story behind her. They missed a trick. The only thing I think they missed a trick is they should have had a relationship with Zial and Jake. Actually, I think the ironies of of Decat's daughter and the emissary's son would have been a really, really interesting thing to explore. I thought the
same thing. It would have been great.
Yeah.
Sirach, how cool would it have been? You would have had silver makeup all over your face. The first kissing scene, and then you have to come and get last looks every single time beforehand.
I had a little, it was a brief thought, but is this the same Zial that played in the first one, or was this a different actress?
This is the same as in Indiscretion, but it's her last appearance, isn't it?
Right. She did look different, I thought too, but I know that she's in the same actress is the same for the first two, and then they have a second one, and then they have a third one, I believe.
Okay, but this is the same one from the one we saw before.
Right.
That's right.
Because she just looked a little bit different to me. I don't know if she looked older or something.
Just older,
Yeah, they changed the makeup. Maybe experimenting with how the sort of Bajoran Cardassian look is meant to be, or something like that.
Before she looked so young. You're right, Strock. When we pictured that episode of her hugging her dad, she seemed like a little kid, and in this one, she seems like a young adult.
She's clearly 17 or 18, isn't she? I think, or meant to be. But it is the same, And then the next one is the next Zial. Time we see her, it's a different actress, and then a third actress. Yep.
But I did find myself. We only have a couple minutes left, but I did find myself thinking the same thing because I'm almost watching these with fresh eyes and kind of like reevaluating things. And when I see that Kira's bringing home Zial, my first thought is she needs to be hanging out with Jake and Nog, since Nog is off on the planet, on Earth. It's a perfect storyline. I mean, even if they don't get romantically involved, which would be a natural thing, a natural storytelling thing, that, Jake has somebody to play off of, and so does she. And it's this natural thing back and forth. And there's Kira and Captain Sisko talking. There's, their respective children. So to speak.
Yeah, I actually thought the same thing. I thought that would be the natural progression. Basically, Kira maybe coming back with Zial and saying, "Hey, Jake, show her around, show her,
Totally.
show her where all the kids go and hang out." So it would seem natural to me, yes, and also irritate Cisco just enough to make it really interesting.
Right,
Exactly
because
that.
that's Ducat's daughter. Oh,
Right.
oh.
Exactly that.
And he would
Exactly
try,
that.
and he would have the same kind of prejudices he had with the Dabo girl, where he's like, "Who are you dating?" But then he ends up meeting her and realizing she's great. Ugh.
Who did you say her father was? I'm not sure about this.
No, don't do that.
Missed opportunity.
And they would both have their reservations. That would be
Yeah. And
that would be
Ducat's
great.
going, who did you say his father was? And
Yeah.
Yeah, he'd be like, now Zial, I don't want you hanging out with that Cisco boy.
These Federation officers, they can't be trusted.
You could literally cut in between the two of them both saying the
Exactly
same
that.
thing.
Yeah.
Right? Who did you say? Who did you say? Yeah, that would have been a great. They missed that opportunity, but
Yeah, that would have been lovely.
That's the next fan fiction book right there.
Oh, easily. I'm sure that's been
Big
done.
money.
Oh, yeah.
So we're just about out of time here. But Una, this has been really great. We really enjoyed having you. And thank you so much for taking the time all the way out in the UK where it's like 3 a.m. or something and snowing.
It's not quite that bad. It's 10 o'clock at night now. So I'm ready for a gin and tonic. Yeah.
Yeah, but thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We forgot to mention the most important thing. We talked about all of your other books, but
yes.
Right, we got so sidetracked so many times. You wrote the autobiography of Catherine Janeway, and it's narrated by Kate Mulgrew. That's such an incredible thing. Can you tell us about it a little bit?
It's a really fun project. So Titan Books have been doing these series of autobiographies. They've done one of Kirk, one of Picard, and the kind of conceit is that it's the character telling the story of their life. So it's in first person. I was born, at this date or whatever. So the conceit is that kind of I interview Janeway and get the story of her life, and obviously I've written the book. So that came out last year. And it's part of the Voyager anniversary celebrations. And then we're just in a couple of days. Kate Mulgrew has done an audio reading of it. That's going to be released in a couple of days. So if you want to hear Kate Mulgrew reading the autobiography of Catherine Janeway, then hop over to Audible or your preferred supplier and find that. So thanks for mentioning that. I think we're so DS9 focused, we nearly forgot about Voyager, didn't we? But that's
we will definitely include the link to that in the description box below. So just make sure that I have it, and we will give it to everybody. And everybody, you've got to check this out. And we probably don't have to tell them that. They're probably already clicking on the link and buying it. It sounds like a really awesome thing, and people are going to love it. So definitely check the description box below. We will include the link, and be sure to check that out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for having me. That was really good fun.
Oh, it was a pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure. Also, I wanted to offer Ryan services if you need Picard's voiceover for one of your books.
Yeah, well, Patrick Stewart is still around, and he lives in the same country as her, so maybe, I mean, I'll be a backup.
Just in case he's not available.
It's a busy
Ryan
man.
does a hell of a Picard.
I'll do the Chief O'Brien. Just kidding. I don't think I could do him.
No,
I always love hearing Americans do British accents.
It probably sounds terrible, doesn't it?
It's always interesting.
And his Worf is good if you do something with that.
Okay, with my Worf. I'll just give you a taste of Picard.
Okay. Oh,
that was uncanny. If I'd had my eyes shut, I would have thought he was in the room.
Right. Give me a sentence; it'll be less canny. Or wait, more canny. I don't know how that works.
A sentence. Oh, come on! You make me write down. You got to pay me to write dialogue.
Anyway, but thank you so much, Una. It's been a pleasure. We do hope to see you again sometime for any kind of expertise that we might need that's Deep Space Nine related or otherwise. But we really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you, guys.
Dr. Una McCormack.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
The one.
Thank you so much.
Right. And everybody at home, be sure to check the description box below. Be sure to comment below. And be sure to be nice to each other. What the hell, right? Sounds like the right thing to do. And we'll see you next time. Stick around.